Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. I'm Henry Seltzer, and we want to take a look at this new moon, which is quite strong. So let's go ahead and take a look at the chart. And let's see, should be able to see the chart here. So what I've got to show you is really quite a lot. I mean, we've been seeing it coming up these past few new moons. You know, there was the June 25th, there was the July 24th, and now we have the August 22nd new moon. And what I've been saying about these three new moons is that they're all incredibly strong. And that is based on the fact that the four outer planets, counting Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are in a tight configuration with each other. And that tight configuration has lasted through this August new moon, and in fact the September new moon sees the first of these planets moving back into their previous sign. You can see in this chart here, looking at Aries first, we're looking at the natural houses, we're not looking at the actual rising sign, because you could have a different rising sign where you are. Here we see that in fact Saturn is getting in a retrograde motion, both Saturn and Neptune, getting closer to the 0 point. It will go back into Pisces before the September 21st. I'm sorry, yes, that's right, September 21st new moon. But I find that September 21st configuration is also very strong. So now I'm also including that one. So these four new moons from June, July, later in the month, June and July and August and September, are all very extremely strong. And it makes some sense if you just look at the actual zeitgeist, at least in the American nation, maybe all over the world, because everybody's kind of hanging on these wars that are going on that don't seem to stop. They seem to get worse. The situation in Palestine is terrible. The situation in Ukraine is terrible. There's no, at the moment, as we speak right now with this late August situation, there's no relief on the horizon. It doesn't look like the ones promulgating the war, that is to say Israel in the case of the Gaza war, Russia in the case of the Ukraine war. It doesn't look like those aggressors are going to stop. And, there is a two-sided situation in the Israeli war. I want to hasten to add, Hamas did a terrible thing on October 7th, a couple of years ago now. But the genocide that's going on in response is an over-response, I feel. I mean, we have to try to somehow get along with each other on this planet. And getting back to the U.S. situation, that partisan battle between Republican and Democrat seems to be getting more intense as well. And let me just go through some of these aspectual situations so you can see what I'm talking about. And in the TimePassages software, we can focus on a particular set of aspects at one time. So let's just click here. I did a command click on Uranus, and let's see what that tells us. And of course, one thing is, as far as the new moon, Sun and Moon aspects to Uranus, very, very strong. It's a square, which is a strong aspect. It's quite close, within about a degree. And in the TimePassages software, you can put the mouse on and see how close, and it says 1 degree actually is the situation between the Sun and Uranus. So, because it's 0 and 23 versus 1 and 22. So, yes, just about exactly a degree between the perfect square from the Sun and Moon to Uranus. So, and then, of course, Uranus is also exactly trine now to 1 degree mark of Pluto. And then also we have the 1 degree mark of Neptune, very close conjunction, 1 degree actual conjunction with Saturn. So that's why I say all four of these outer planets, we have the trine between Uranus and Pluto, and then we have the midpoint of that trine being a sextile to both ends, which we have Saturn and Neptune. So all four outer planets are involved with each other quite tight, and then involved as well, you see, with the new moon. If I were to click on the Sun instead of Uranus, you'd see that it makes aspects makes an inconjunct or quincunx aspect to Pluto and also to Neptune, Saturn. So that's a yod to the sun and moon in this new moon, and also square to Uranus. So it's hard to say what to focus on first. I mean, we also have, by the way, a very strong sextile to one of these new planets that I've been researching. I call them nature planets, these KBO planets that were named by the IAU officially as planets, along with Pluto being also one of these KBO planets out in the Kuiper Belt. Also called dwarf planets, but I don't like that term so well because it gets mixed up with the word asteroid, which means little star, and dwarf planet sounds like little planet. It sounds very similar, and there is a belt of them in the Kuiper Belt. There is a belt of asteroids in the asteroid belt, and there's so many we can't really work with all of them. We can look at some of the interesting names that come up and so on with the asteroids. With the Kuiper Belt, these four, which is Pluto, and then also Haumea and Makemake, and also Eris, of course, Eris being the biggest, really, of all of these in the Kuiper Belt, and is just as important as Pluto in charts, I find. So, it's very interesting. These four planets, I call them KBO planets, that are in the Kuiper Belt and are the biggest, largest objects in the Kuiper Belt, really have a lot to do with chart work. They very much do. I've got so much research on it now. And I can just say that the fact that Haumea is prominent, this is Haumea, this is Makemake, these are the glyphs, the alternate glyphs that I use in my software. They're intended to represent the fact that they're also called Plutoids. They move in a very similar orbit to Pluto. The orbital period of Pluto is 248 years. The orbital period of Haumea is 284 years. And then the orbital period of, this is Makemake, is 309. So they're all pretty close together that way. And especially Haumea and Makemake are very close, being 284 and 309, about 25-year difference. And they seem to have a very similar effect, similar archetype, with one being the feminine archetype of nature connection. They are profound connection to nature, connection to natural law internally, understanding that there's a right way and a wrong way, there's right action, right relationship, and also truth-telling. These are important. These people have a sense of that. They have a sense of the connection to nature being paramount, a sense that it's not all just a pure rational point of view. There's also a mystical point of view that, in fact, inspires astrology, that they partake in also, these new ones, these nature planets, because the idea of nature is also the idea of kind of a mystical connection that we have with the universe, that we can't ignore that as humans. So I'm bringing all this up because the square between Pluto and Haumea is very close right now. They're both at 1 degree something. And triggered by this new moon, which is sextile, and then also a quincunx to the two ends of it. So whenever we see Pluto and Haumea featured like this, it has to do with the truth coming out. That's what I've found over and over again. I have some very, very specific evidence for this that I won't go into, but just what I'm saying about this, and especially about this new moon, is the truth coming out becomes more and more and more of an issue, and we've seen that in our national politics. We see, the attempts to change the subject. We see the attempts to, gaslight, to hide the truth, to pretend it's not there. And we see the effort, no, we have to get the truth. We really want to see the truth of this matter, whatever it might be politically. And so it's a pitched battle between Republican and Democrat right now, as you know. And a lot of that has to do with the truth coming out. That's a very important factor in these current times, and is really emphasized in this new moon. Also, for that matter, the next new moon as well. These are all very powerful new moons that are very close to the beginning of the sign, even next time when it will be at like 29 degrees of Virgo, the September 21st new moon, but that's very close to the 0 point of Libra, which, is again very strong with all these, exactly opposite to the positions of Saturn and Neptune. So I see that this next new moon coming up is another very strong one. So we're just in for it. I think we just have a very powerful end of year all the way coming up, here. And we just have to dig in and do what we can. it gets basically down to the idea of articulating your own truth, finding what that is, sticking with that, and articulating it and acting upon it to whatever extent you can. That's very important right now and is the only way. As Margaret Mead said, let it never be said that a small group of very dedicated and determined people can't change the course of history. In fact, that's the only thing that ever has. So we're in for, as I say, looking again at this very strong position of Uranus. I would say that because the new moon is square to Uranus, because Uranus participates in this very strong trine and sextile configuration with all 4 outer planets, counting Saturn, I would just say that we're really, this is a wild card. Uranus has been called freedom from the known. It has to do with rebellion. It has to do with jumping the tracks. It has to do with unexpected revelations. It has to do with deep intuition. It has to do with transpersonal, going beyond the 3D reality that we have, which all 3 of these outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, do. So it's powerful. I mean, it's like, who knows? We could see anything. I mean, this is the end of summer coming up as far as the political landscape. September is when things start to get going again, and we have a very strong, as I say, both a strong early part of September and a strong later part of September into October. So we're just looking, I'm just looking not very far ahead, but I just know it's all the way to the end of the year. I'm sure it's a pretty powerful time. And it's time to be counted. It's time to everybody has to be standing up, taking a stand for what they most deeply believe. It's really powerful now. There's so many other little things in this new moon that's quite crazy. If you look at the position of Neptune, this is Jupiter. If you look at the position of Jupiter, it is also, it's trine the north node, water to water, 16 to 18. So trining the north node means we have to figure out where we're headed. We have to figure out individually, each one of our lives, what are we up to? Where are we headed? How does that connect with all the things that are going on in the society? And it does have a very close, there is this square, of course, between the sun and moon and Uranus, and this is the midpoint. It's a semi-square between Uranus and Jupiter, which is always good for new ideas. Jupiter and Uranus coming together is a signal for invention, creativity, thinking outside the box, a little bit of joyousness with the Jupiter, a little bit of expansion with the Jupiter, and it does hit the same aspect of semi-square with the new moon as well. So just this one little piece of this configuration here is very strong and powerful. So there's really a lot to think about. Excuse me. And then we want to look, too, at the position of Venus, because Venus at 27 Cancer, that's a square with the position together about a degree apart between Eris and Chiron. And that tells us what? It tells us that there's a bit of a painful situation that we have to deal with, and that it's so important that we come to our own interpretation of events in our life. That's what Uranus is all about, finding what's inside ourselves that only we know, and determining what that is, what it is that you cannot not do. Very important. And that's magnified right now, too, because what do we see? But we see that very close square between these outer shamanic planets, Eris and Chiron, which go to depth within the psyche, of course. And then we have Venus. So this is also strong, including the fact that Venus makes an aspect also to Maki. We're looking at a quintile, 1.3, very close quintile, both of these. They're almost the same place. That is to say, Mars with Maki. One more second here. So with Mars, with Mars and Maki in such a tight configuration, that is again very important timing. Maki has a lot to do with activism, with having a sense of what's the right thing, but also an agenda to act upon that. Seeing Mars with it brings two things. One is the warlike nature of Mars is activated in this way, and also the basic activism that we see represented by Maki also activated. So I can't say it enough. This is a very strong configuration all around. We see too that even Mercury is in the act, Mercury being this close sextile to this position of Mars and Maki. So, and I didn't look at this actual aspect here, which is that there is a quintile of less than a degree between also Uranus and Mercury. So this is again, Mercury is just coming out of its retrograde, of course. So this is again a very thoughtful time, a time of brilliant ideas that we can use to try to make things better. A lot of creativity right now in the thought process and how we're going to deal with these things. A lot of defensiveness on the part of people that are trying to pull the wool, trying to shade the truth. They're kind of in a desperate situation. Don't let the truth actually come out because we won't look so good in that case. So it's a very powerful time going into September, which is again, when the fall starts up again, when business starts to happen again. We really have a lot to take a look at least in this country for sure, with the current changing situation. So I think that's about what I wanted to convey here. Let me see if I can get back to this viewpoint. And let me just say, as I often do, good luck with that. The basis of wishing you luck is also to remind you that no matter what, the universe has your back. We're not in a random situation here. Everything has meaning. It is part of a cultural evolution. It is part of our own individual evolution. And we have to pay attention to that. We have to be aware and we have to have faith that what we do is not in vain, that it's not everything is powerful and beyond our comprehension and control. We do have comprehension. We do have a power of our own truth that we can bring. And so important. You have to say what you really believe, say how you see it all fit together for you and also for the culture itself. And do what you can, even if it's just talking about it. It helps. And if it's along the lines, taking action along the lines that you can bring by word or deed, protest is necessary. All of it counts, and very much counts. And if enough people pick up the threads of this and go for it, that is the other superpower besides Russia and the United States and China, is the power of public opinion. Can't be beat once we get it together. So once again, best of luck. See you next time.